Hello everyone. As David mentioned, I'm joining online from Sydney, and we have these 3 days of Microsoft MCAPS events running. So we were very busy. But I'm happy to talk to you tonight. And the focus will be on the past Microsoft Build event and what's our top 5 picks from there. So yes, David, shall we start?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. I'll probably just mention if anybody has got a question in the group here, grab my attention. I've got a second microphone that we can use for that. I was trying to juggle having the room mic as well as a lapel mic, and it just gave a lot of feedback which didn't sound so good. So just to let you know that if you have got a question as we go through this evening. Okay, yeah, let's go, Lana.
Right. So the first topic we will be discussing, it's a low-code, no-code approach, and if it's definitely a game changer for the small and medium businesses.
Yeah. So Lana, what's the point of this? Why is it important?
Yeah, so with the COVID and with the supply chain struggle and with all of these troubles we're experiencing with war in Europe, majority of small and medium businesses experiencing staff shortage, especially in IT, but also have high demands for digital transformations, so to automate daily operations or to get closer to the client and change business direction quickly. With the scarcity of IT resources these days on the market, and please be mindful they're very expensive, these businesses can learn how to build web applications for browser, iOS and Android, for example, drag and drop controls to the visual designer and integrate with the Power Apps. So with all this, in most cases, IT teams in medium and enterprise level businesses overloaded, delivering a number of asks and projects coming from their business divisions when these companies are growing. And if you can see what these projects are, you will find half of these projects internal to the company, where business departments act as a client for IT department. So why we cannot give business people a powerful tool where they can build their own application to serve daily market tasks, for example, internal ledger or get a review from Google, etc. With all of this in mind, Azure provides such services where security is already embedded, but users do not need to have a knowledge of any particular programming language or framework, and these tools are safe to use for unexperienced users. Moreover, you don't need to manage repositories or deployment pipelines and do release governance for such projects, and see how much time your IT team can have back concentrating on strategic projects and deliveries. That's why I think it's became more and more important in the current situation.
So Lana, what tools specifically are we talking about? Is it just Power Apps, or is it more specific things than that?
Power Apps definitely number one. It's a number one player in low-code, no-code tools in Azure with Azure Table Storage, but we also have Azure Logic Apps. And these Azure Logic Apps has plenty of built-in connectors, and you pretty much can connect any service in Azure and outside all major cloud providers, Google and everything. So these two major tools. Yep.
I'm curious, has anyone here made use of Power Apps already? Oh, I see one hand. Like,
not technically Logic Apps, but Power Automate, which is basically the same thing.
Okay, so Power Automate, yeah. Have other people looked at it and sort of dismissed it, or haven't looked at it and don't really know? Looked at it, still working on it. Okay, thanks, Dave. Cool.
Yeah, Just wanted to know what was an experience, and if you have any feedback, please provide. We have Microsoft feedback page where you can basically come and leave a message for product group.
Nice. All right. Next, moving on. I think I've got to do something for this one.
Yep, a GitHub Copilot, AI pair programmer, and when it might be available for the public and for the general availability.
Yeah. All right. I will play the video.
This short video from the Microsoft build give us a highlight. What is this GitHub Copilot and actually what's inside? Why it's great.
All right. I will play and include the sound, might even be better.
GitHub Copilot, let's see an example what is the future of coding. So instead of doing a simple autocomplete, you can now just write the headline of the function and GitHub will autocomplete the function itself. So how does it work? Basically, GitHub goes online and take the code that you just started to write, send it to the GitHub Copilot services, and then start to provide you a suggestion based on the code that you have started to write. You can just use tab to change between a few alternatives. And once you select the code that you want, you will actually import the suggestion for the next user. So you're getting the power of the internet in your apps brand by using GitHub Copilot, and you don't need to do this context switch anymore because GitHub Copilot go looking for in the internet for you and bring you the result. It works really great on all those code and very basic routines that you want to do in everyday life.
Okay, that was the video.
Nice and short.
Yeah. So, like, I haven't used Copilot myself. I'm curious, like, what languages will it work with? Is it just JavaScript, or does it do anything else?
Currently, it optimized for writer in Python, JavaScript, and TypeScript languages, Ruby, Go, C# or C++. However, can be used to generate suggestions on other languages and variety of the frameworks too. So it's not in a public preview, it's not publicly available. We're still waiting for this to be available sometime soon. I assume not many people had a chance to play with this, and because even before Microsoft built, it was only by demand. You have to register to get an access. But yeah, it's a great feature which is powered by OpenAI Codex, and this is a new AI system created by OpenAI, open source companies. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw some announcements, I think the last couple of weeks. So it sounds like it is starting to become available. So I'm curious, just in the room, has anybody been on the beta program? Have they tried it out? No. So how do you get started? Like, is it just in yeah? How do you get started? What tooling do you use with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So download and install, and it's available as an extension in Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio 2022, and JetBrains Suite for IDEs. So these three tools, I think majority of the developers these days using Visual Studio Code, so it should be relatively easy to start with, just an extension.
I must admit, I didn't really realize it was usable in full Visual Studio or JetBrains for that matter. So
yeah, JetBrains is not widely known tool, and yeah, but
Yeah.
Microsoft Declare, it's available in JetBrains suite for IDs.
Yeah. So is there any risks in using this sort of tooling? Like, I don't know, are you going to get your competitors' code suddenly appearing in your editor or anything like that? Or
There is always risks and security implications, but as a developer, software engineers, you are responsible for the security and quality of your code. Whatever tool is helping you, whatever code is helping you, you still own the full responsibility of this. So you should take the same precaution when using the code generated by Copilot that would you take for the code you didn't write yourself and take from the open source or, for example, Stack Overflow or any from public internet. So I recommend to use static code analysis, testing, IP scanning, and tracking for security vulnerabilities. Although GitHub provides you a number of features to help you to monitor and improve your code quality, for example, GitHub Actions. Also, this GitHub Copilot uses filters to block offensive content and avoid producing suggestions in sensitive contexts. And product team, Microsoft product team, is constantly improving the filtering system to more intelligent suggestions generated by GitHub Copilot and exclude biases, discriminatory or abusive output. And if you notice something, please report and provide your feedback.
Cool. So I think if I heard you correctly, you said that just like we copy code from Stack Overflow, when we use Copilot, we should also review that code. So
absolutely.
I wonder if people are really honest, how often they would review the code they pasted from Stack Overflow. But I won't ask that question to the group. But yeah, it's a bit of a reminder that you don't just blindly copy and paste. Ryan, I'll hand you the microphone. You just talk to it.
I have a couple of questions actually.
Yeah.
The data source, there was an AI ML type model that's running off. What's the data source being used for it? Is that just Microsoft projects that it's been scanning over, or is it running like over all of open source stuff ever?
Definitely GitHub in the first place, and Stack Overflow, which is affiliated somehow with Microsoft, and open sources, trusted open sources as well. Definitely some analysis applied, and it will not go to untrusted sources. But GitHub these days, it has so many great projects and so many examples of the code. So I would say in the majority of the cases, it should give you like quality feedback. But as David mentioned, the code written with an AI pair programmer should go through the same life cycle as we do normally. So you should commit and create a pull request and give someone for review, and then address feedbacks from this review, do static code analysis, and etc. So normal life cycle.
I guess the next question is, by using it, do you automatically start sending the code you're writing on potentially sensitive projects to Copilot, or is it a one-way only thing when you're using the Copilot extension?
Sorry, I didn't get that question. Maybe perhaps you rephrase it, or maybe just repeat.
So the code you're writing, that it's sending off to Copilot to be scanned and basically helping understand your patterns and basically the architectures and all that goes into your code base. Does that always send all the data off to Copilot, even when you're working on potentially sensitive closed source projects? Or is it a one-way data write, so you're only receiving data from rather than sending your coding to Copilot? That makes sense.
If you're asking about backwards compatibility, I don't think what you're writing is going to Copilot, because you obviously own your intellectual property on the code, and sometimes you're working inside the boundaries of your organization where the code you wrote is basically a subject and owned by your organization. So if you are not working on the open source project, then the code you wrote remains your basically property, your company property, unless you participate in the open source and you basically offer these to other and make it like an open code. If I get your question right.
That was basically the question, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I may say, in this, what I can see where AI Copilot can help, it definitely can help people early in career. Because with the scarcity of resources in IT, and we see companies, the speed of development is increasing, and we don't have these luxuries before when someone senior sit with a junior developer and they do coding for hours together. Unfortunately, with the speed, when companies increase in speed to the market, that's not offered anymore, and sometimes you just have like 5 to 10 minutes attention from your senior colleagues, but you have to rely on your own knowledge. And for people early in career, have someone like a co-pilot and writing code together and working together will help them to learn and improve the quality of the code. So I can see the major benefits for them.
Yeah. Ryan's question actually reminded me a bit also of a different product, which we're not really talking about tonight, but IntelliCode, which is the sort of AI in Visual Studio, which I think that does train on your own code base, but it's not leveraging the GitHub open source corpus of code. So they're sort of similar tools, but with different approaches. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So how much does this cost? Is it a really expensive tool, or is it going to accessible to people?
It's definitely not coming for free, so it's a paid feature. You will need monthly or yearly subscription. However, if you're a verified student or the owner of popular open source projects on a GitHub, you are eligible for the free option. If you meet the criteria for free subscription, you will be automatically notified when you visit GitHub Copilot subscription page. And if you do not meet criteria, you will be offered a 60 days free trial, and then you can move to the paid subscription. But again, Microsoft aiming to change the world, but not rip off people, and all our features, they actually quite accessible. Yeah, so it shouldn't be like too much.
Cool. All right. Any other questions around GitHub Copilot? Yes, Ryan's got another one. Okay.
So will it be available separately from GitHub, say for those of us who are using Azure DevOps as our repository systems, or will it only be to GitHub Enterprise type subscriptions?
Regardless if you're using Azure DevOps or not, if you're basically using Visual Studio Code, it should be available for you. It doesn't have a link to Azure DevOps, but definitely link to GitHub.
Cool. All right. Okay, what's next?
So the next topic we want to discuss today is a live preview in Visual Studio with a .NET MAUI. And now is my turn to play the video. Okay. Let me do my best and share my screen.
.NET MAUI lets me build native apps for multiple devices.
Is it okay?
iOS, macOS, Android, and Windows with the same project and codebase. Instead of learning different stacks and languages for each device, you can use one language, one set of libraries, and one UI stack for all of them. So this dev box is already configured with all the device emulators and developer settings I need to get coding immediately. Here you can see the platform-specific folders. .NET MAUI under the hood uses technologies out there today for building native apps on Windows with WinUI, Mac Catalyst for macOS, and of course, iOS and Android. .NET MAUI abstracts all of those frameworks into a single framework built on .NET 6. Here are the resources like the fonts, images, and styles that are shared across devices all in one place. And I've got all the shared UI for this podcast app in a folder right here. If we look at our project file, you'll see that all the target frameworks are right up here and all the metadata of my app. Here, we also have a place to define our app icon, splash screen, images, and fonts from my resources folder. Now let's debug the Android app. Since I'm on a Windows 11 machine, I can use Windows Subsystem for Android. With .NET MAUI, I also have access to APIs directly from C# to over 60 device platform features, including things like isolated storage, sensors, geolocation, camera, and more. Now that I have my Android app up and running, let's make some UI changes. I have the live preview window right here, which lets me see the running UI right in Visual Studio. I'll bring up the new code search and look for the Discover page. Notice there's no latency here as I type. I can quickly make a change here and use Hot Reload to immediately see it on the UI. Hot Reload works on my C# code as well. I'll also mention that with the release of .NET MAUI, you can now add native capabilities to your Blazor web apps. This means you can create hybrid web apps, which combine web and native UI together in a single client application. You can also share Blazor web components in .NET MAUI apps. The podcast app uses a Blazor component for our Listen Together feature. The .NET MAUI development tools remain in preview, but will release soon. You can install the .NET MAUI workload from the Visual Studio 2022 preview channel.
Yep, that was a video.
So, just a side comment. I've just started using Windows 11 this week, and I've been using WSL for a while, but that video mentioned the Windows subsystem for Android. I'm asking, anyone use that subsystem yet? The Windows 11 users? No, I'm conflicted now because I've got an iPhone. I don't have Android. So anyway, so how does this work? I mean, is it just using that subsystem, or is it really? Do you need to have a device, or how's it all work?
Yeah, great question. It's possible with a XAML hot reload, which been mentioned as a Visual Studio feature. So XAML in particular, it stands for the Extensible Application Markup Language, which is XML-based language that's an alternative to programming code for instantiating and initialization objects and organizing these objects in a parent-child hierarchy. So basically, this .NET MAUI and XAML allows developer to define user interfaces using markup language rather than code. Although XAML is not required for .NET MAUI applications, but it is recommended approach to developing your UI because it has a tooling support. And I personally found this fascinating because I remember my days, early days when I have to change HTML and then compile and build everything and then run this application. And if I make a mistake and already deploy this to UAT on another environment, and then I have to do all these steps again, change something, test locally, then deploy again. With this live preview feature, I would consider something which will give me immediate visibility, how my page look like and what my customers will see. And I can make changes in seconds and they all will be reflected. Just want to mention the XAML also well suited for model view model MVVM pattern, where XAML defines the view that is linked to view model code through XAML-based data binding.
So XAML, I mean, I've done a bit of XAML before with WPF. There might be some people here that admit they used XAML with Silverlight, and they've got the scars to prove it. So this is XAML, but it's as I understand it, it sort of comes from Xamarin Forms, I think, is the XAML with .NET MAUI. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it will be well aligned with your suggested topic for August. You mentioned .NET MAUI, and I think it will be extremely good opportunity to get some subject matter experts who will be talking to us from the inside and showing us how it's basically works and implemented and where it came from and what to expect from this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the hot reload or the live editing is pretty cool. I mean, what tools do we need to use to be able to take advantage of that?
Visual Studio. It's currently available only in the Visual Studio 2022. But because it's a limited, it's only in a private preview and not publicly available, I expect the other tools are coming as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have like a small picture if you'd like me to share. And this small picture actually showing this XAML architecture, let's say.
Okay.
So we can have a look briefly. Let me share my screen again. And we talk a little bit. It's not a perfect quality because I put this just in the paint, but it should give us quite a good overview.
So who's done XAML development of one kind or another over the years? Who's still doing XAML now?
So
few hands.
If you can see my picture here, so there are layers, application code and then .NET MAUI, and behind this we have .NET for Android and .NET for iOS and for Mac and WinUI, and then .NET 6 behind, and then we have a couple of runtimes, and again Android operating system, so it's like this. And in .NET MAUI app, you write code that primarily interact with a .NET MAUI app, which is number one here. And then .NET MAUI then directly consumes the native platform APIs, which is, for example, number 3, .NET for Android. And in addition, application code may directly exercise platform APIs, which is number 2, if required. So, yeah. I'm not a .NET MAUI or XAML expert. It will be nice to get someone to know and learn. I'm always curious to reach engineering team where I could and get a little bit more deeper than Microsoft just public documentation. Yeah.
No, I'll be interested in that. So looking forward to that. Next couple of months, hopefully we can dive in a bit deeper. Oh,
right.
All right. What's next?
Next, Microsoft DevBox and how we can spin up new machine in a few minutes. That's also a very cool topic discussed on Microsoft Build. Actually, yep.
I've got my laptop here, Lana. I mean, isn't that enough?
Yeah, that's absolutely enough. Yeah. So, yeah.
So I've got my laptop here. I've got my software set up. I mean, what else do I need? Is DevBox? What's that going to do for me?
You need internet connection. Yeah. So, what is DevBox and why? As I mentioned before, and that's I think the hottest topic these days. Supply chain is suffering from all of these COVID and war in Europe and everything. And sometimes for team, like for the company, it is a challenge to get powerful development machine for your growing development team. And with the COVID and hybrid style of work, more and more companies are managing global teams now. And there is also a very important point here, development velocity. So you probably all noticed the speed of life is getting faster, and I feel the same with the development life cycle. It's getting faster and faster, and company aiming to the market quickly. So the goal is go to the market quickly. So, but really, companies with a higher development velocity, they have 4 times higher revenue than counterparts. So not all our developers are sitting on the cutting edge of technologies and have all appropriate instruments available due to the licensing and cost of these, which might go to the inefficiency of development, which is still the biggest challenge when it comes to the local hardware or fragile development environment. So Microsoft introduced DevBox, a new cloud service that provides developers with a secure, ready-to-code developer workstation for hybrid teams of any size. So to answer your question, David, yeah, you need only your laptop and internet connection. It allows developer to focus on the code only they can write, making it easy for them to access tools and resources they need without worrying about workstations configuration and maintenance. So it's pre-configured in the cloud for specific projects and tasks, ensure unified management, security, and compliance with Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. These dev boxes are hosted in Azure, and you can access them from anywhere, from Windows, from Mac OS, Android, iOS, and from your web browser.
So this actually sounds actually relevant to me because I work as a consultant now, and I've had it a couple of times where the clients we're working with will send us a laptop that's been configured for us to work with them. And one time that got sent through a courier. The other time I had to go and visit their head office here in Adelaide, which wasn't anywhere near where I live. So it was like a day trip to go and pick up a laptop, have to sign into it, take it home and hope that it would still work when I got home because it was away from their network. And then you had all this challenge of installing the tools and licenses and keeping up to date. And that's an ongoing challenge, sort of fighting VPNs and proxy servers and all that kind of fun. So that it sounds like this might be a better solution for that we don't have to have these laptops sent out, and you never know if the laptop's going to be a good one or a really rubbish one that they send out to the contracting people. So
yeah, that's right. But these DevBox, they guaranteed performance, pre-install tools, configuration. When I was back in software engineering, like I might spend a day configuring my development machine, setting all of these, like Visual Studio these days and all of these databases and everything spin up. And yeah, it was a hassle actually, but we'll see how it will be with the Microsoft DevBox.
Yeah, no, I mean, as much as I love Chocolatey and Box Data, to have a machine already ready to go and not have to spend that day or two or ongoing maintenance would be great. I see a question from Ryan.
With the dev boxes, are they going to be able to work with basically closed network type companies? So in David's example, a company that has a laptop that presumably VPNs into their network, is a dev box going to be able to connect through a VPN or some sort of tunnel to a closed network?
Got it. If you need to integrate this in your corporate network, that might be considered, but actually it's cloud native. So because it's an Azure service, it fits very well when you're developing cloud native applications. Although this Microsoft DevBox can be controlled by Microsoft Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which means if your company managing your devices via Intune, yes, it could be integrated in your corporate network if needed. Yep. This might, yeah, go ahead, David.
So they they VMs that stay around, or do they like it when you stop using it for the day? Does it disappear and then you get a new one the next day, or how does that part of it work?
DevBox is a dedicated VM for sure,
Right.
and you can use this during your project. It's an ideal use case when you start new project, you configure your DevBox for this project, and while you're working on this project, you have this Microsoft DevBox. When you don't need this, you basically like discard this, but yes, it will stay with you.
Okay, yeah, so you can have your setup, log out for the day and log in the next day and everything's just as you left it. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's for your project life cycle, and you can access this via development dev portal. Just to mention, Microsoft DevBox is now in a private preview, and it will be released to the public in the next few months. And currently, you can go to Microsoft Docs and submit sign-up form for the wait list to evaluate the private preview. So if you want to play with this, please submit your sign-up form.
Yeah.
So you can also have not only one DevBox, but you can have DevBoxes pool. If you have a team of people who are working on one project and they all need unified configuration, you can have a pool. And this DevBoxes pool can be managed from Azure portal.
So they'll all have a similar kind of configuration in
That's
that pool.
right.
Ah,
that's right.
Nice. Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I guess it's still in preview, but be interested to see what the pricing for that is when it is announced.
Oh, yeah. Pricing always number one, but I'm not aware about pricing. All I know is highly secured, unified, ready to use, ready to code developers workstations. But in the Azure, actually, we have a tool which we call cost of ownership calculator. And jumping to this tool, you can compare apple to apple cost of your on-prem hardware and networking via Azure networking. So if you will compare the cost of this powerful development machine, which you have to physically buy and integrate and manage in your network, and then DevBox, which is dedicated for the project, then you can see the difference. Azure will be more cost appealing. Yeah,
no, that would be interesting to see. Yes, like the buying a physical laptop for 3 years and maintaining that versus just for a project, but also the advantage of having it available instantly versus having to wait for the courier to deliver it or to go out and pick it up. In fact, one of my colleagues went to pick it up from the head office that was nearest to him and discovered that it was locked in a cupboard and they didn't have the key. So it was a wasted trip. So yes.
Can you imagine the situation when you're managing hybrid geolocation team, when part of your team sitting in Melbourne and some in Canberra, some in Sydney, and moreover part of your team sitting in New Zealand, and you have people in Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and other proximities? Like, can you imagine how you will be delivering all of these hardware for your global hybrid team?
Yeah. Well, you've just described the team I'm working with right now. My colleagues are interstate, and we've also got a team member who's based in the Philippines. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How did you know that, Lana? That's a bit spooky. So. Microsoft knows everything.
Microsoft knows. Yeah. And I'm also working in a hybrid team. The new team I joined, it's New Zealand and Adelaide and Brisbane and Melbourne and Perth. So yeah, we hybrid as well.
Yeah. Another question from Mark.
I cannot hear the question, so maybe David, you will pass it to me.
So yeah, how do you set up the pool of dev boxes? Is there a way to customize them?
Yeah, I haven't played enough to be able to answer this question. because between Microsoft build and the SMCAPs, we have end of financial year, which was really overwhelming and overloading. And despite how much I want to touch all of these new things, I don't have physical time to do so. So I think Microsoft documentation will give us an answer. All what I know is you can manage and set up them through the Azure portal. So yeah, I encourage you to apply for the private preview and play yourself.
Yes. Okay. Cool. I'll be looking forward to that. So, yeah. Okay. What's next on the list, Lana?
The last one, very exciting because I love this a lot. It's a Microsoft SQL 2022. New features and better security, and what we can see in the preview. So Microsoft is happy to announce SQL Server 2022 public preview, and you can find it ak.ms/get SQL Server 2022. So please go and download and play and give us a feedback. We have major enhancements here. Data governance, analytics, operational data, with the major features. So SQL 22 is now truly hybrid data platform connected to Azure, bidirectional to Azure SQL.
So what would be the use of that? What's a good use case for that kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. The perfect use case I see, it's a high availability and disaster recovery scenario. When you replicate data to and from the cloud, you can set up online failover SQL Server 2022 on-prem with Azure SQL managed instances, which makes overall data governance and maintenance process much, much easier. Does it answer your question, David?
I think so. Yeah. I'm reminded we had Rob Farley speak to the group last month on diving into SQL sort of details and the low-level stuff. So there was a lot of interest in getting Rob back, and it'd be interesting to hear his thoughts on 2022 as well on some of those new features to take advantage of those.
Yeah, when it comes to new features, I can see Azure Synapse for analytics via Azure Synapse link, and also Microsoft Purview connection to get visibility over your entire data. And with the data catalog and data map capabilities, you have centralized policy management for better security, and also innovated data protection capability to bring better security. Microsoft proudly admits that's the least vulnerable database in the industry, with the new features of SQL Server Ledger, where you know the state of your database. It captures metadata about the transaction, such as commit timestamp and the identity of the user who made this change, and also encryption enhancements to support latest version of TLS, and also Linux security enhancements. And of course, the major question when it comes to data and SQL Server are performance and availability improvements. These can be achieved with a built-in query intelligence, which adapts to your workload. This intelligence query processing solves parameter sniffing sensitivity. You all remember when you have your store procedures compiled, but when you execute this second time with another parameters, you have like execution plan is different and performance is not that great. So this parameter sniffing and parameter sensitivity is no longer the case. And it also supports hints without changing the code. So these are great features from SQL 22.
Okay. I've used SQL Server on-prem. I've used SQL in Azure a bit. You mentioned Azure Synapse. I've heard of that. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what it was, other than it's something to do with data. So just to go back to what is Azure Synapse?
Yeah, so You're working with Azure Synapse when you do analytics, data analytics. So it comes with it's basically a concept when you like apply analytical algorithms on your data. It's very important if you are definitely doing some big data, or for example, if you provide some analytics capability for your end users. So that's enterprise analytic services, and it helps you to accelerate time to get your data across your databases and data warehouses in a big data system.
Okay. And the SQL ledger, is that sort of like a audit trail kind of thing, or is that's sort of the use case for that?
Yeah, that's actually, as you mentioned, it's a trail. It's a separate data database. And if you think about high compliance industries, for example, financial industry, they have lots of regulation and they have lots of compliance requirements. Or if you think about government data or some defense data or aircraft. So this will give you a better control and security around your data because you know precisely about every transaction and you know about state of your database and your data on every step, on every milestone when it's growing. So yeah, it's a really powerful audit capability for highly regulated industries.
Yeah, that's often you end up building that yourself at the moment. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I spent years and years building these data ledger myself. When I basically have another record in another table when something happened into the system, for example, authentication or user change identity or anything, or some very valuable transactions coming, I have to manually create a record in another table in another database capturing these data. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's nice if we can get that in the box, not have to build it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Cool. So are these just for SQL 22 on-prem or in Azure? Who gets these features?
So I recommend go and check documentations because it's changing constantly. So go to SQL Server 22 preview documentation and go to for example, ledger section. And where in this section ledger, you can see the tag applies to. So it says applies to SQL 22 and Azure SQL database. Or for example, intelligence query processing applies to SQL Server, Azure SQL database and Azure SQL managed instances. However, when you go to TLS section, you can see TLS 1.3 support on SQL on Linux applies only for SQL Server 22 on-prem. So, and public preview for this bidirectional disaster recovery capability I mentioned earlier, that will be in the future date. It will occur in a future date.
Okay. So the question that occurs to me is like with Azure SQL, are these things just going to appear there, or do you have to do something to make these features appear when you're using Azure, or do you know how that works?
With on-prem, you definitely have to install SQL 22 and you have access to this feature. With the cloud, it depends what's available, and yep.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, any questions on SQL 22 preview? No, that's okay. All right. I think that might be it. Lana, is that all you wanted to cover?
Yeah, that's definitely from my side. Yeah, that's from my side.
All right. Any other questions about any of the content we covered tonight, or to put Lana on the spot, any other content from Build that she didn't cover tonight that you want to ask her about? No, that's okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lana, for joining us. We appreciate you giving up your evening to be with us virtually.
No worries.
The technology seemed to work pretty well. So thank you for that. There's some quite interesting stuff coming out. And yeah, some of the things for me personally, not as interesting, but other things are really interesting. So hopefully there's something there for everybody tonight that you might take away that might be worth following up, checking out a preview or a trial, or taking it back to your colleagues to see whether it's something is worth having a closer look at. So, but yeah, thank you, Lana, and I wish you a good evening. I think our pizzas might be here soon. The fact that I can see Marcus popped out the building.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, David, for inviting me, and thank you all for your attention. You've been such a great audience with the questions, and it was a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your pizza and have a good night. Bye-bye.